The U.S. proposes a United Nations arms embargo on South Sudan. An increase in new HIV infections in Uganda worries health officials. And it's more than just glamour. Queen Bey's Vogue cover is one for the history books. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Tonight, we begin our broadcast in North Africa, where residents of Egypt's capital city, Cairo, are shaken after officials say a large car bomb exploded outside a state security building. Authorities say at least 6 policemen were among those wounded by the massive blast, which tore the facade of the government building and shattered windows of surrounding structures in the Shubra residential neighborhood. Eyewitnesses say the bombers parked the explosives-laden car outside the government facility before escaping in another vehicle. An Islamic State-affiliated group is claiming responsibility for the attack. A Cairo resident explains what happened.
There was a ball of fire and a huge sound, glass flying in the air. Cars were damaged and people were injured. This is not fair. The kids were so scared.
Well, insurgents have killed hundreds of police in a wave of attacks on mostly official targets since the 2013 military oust of Islamic President Mohamed Morsi. But recently, the militants have focused more of their attacks on civilians. Now, in Central Africa, Burundi's President Pierre Nkurunziza is beginning his third term after a surprise swearing-in ceremony Thursday, 6 days before the scheduled inauguration. The president's bid for a third term sparked a political crisis that was only intensified when he won the July 21st election in a ballot that has been heavily criticized as flawed. Critics say Mr. Nkurunziza's re-election undermined the constitution and the Arusha Accord, which effectively ended the country's 13-year civil war. Now, for more on the swearing-in of President Nkurunziza, veteran Burundian journalist Apollinaire Niyirora joins me on the phone from Bujumbura. Apollinaire, when was the swearing-in first made public?
Yes, the swearing-in ceremony of President Pierre Nkurunziza for a third term in office, who was re-elected on the 21st of July, it took place effectively today in the morning, and the people who were present there were the country's senior officials, and also a few delegates from other countries like Kenya, Tanzania, South Africa, Egypt, China, and Russia. Those are the people who attended the ceremony, and people. It was actually an event that was hastily organized because people received invitations early today, a few hours before the event.
That's interesting. Early today, but then does anybody have an idea why it was done in such a fashion? Why so sudden?
Well, some critics say, it was done today and in a hastily way because there is some pressure from the opposition and the people who went into exile and who formed the council recently in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So the opposition and those people who went into exile are saying beyond the 26th of September, of August, the President Nkurunziza will be ruling the country illegally. So some critics are saying that maybe the event took place hastily or earlier than planned, just to avoid that pressure from the opposition.
What's the general reaction from the citizens across Burundi?
Well, citizens across Burundi, mainly in the capital, Bujumbura, where I'm based, are saying, this is a violation of the Constitution and of domestic laws. They say, he should wait until the 26th, and in order to be sworn in as a president of Burundi. They don't look happy. They fear that, Burundi might go into deep crisis.
Indeed, such uncertainty in that country. We look forward to more of your updates. Apollinaire, thank you very much. Apollinaire Niyirora is a Burundian journalist. Now, staying in the region, the United States is proposing that the UN Security Council impose an arms embargo on South Sudan after President Salva Kiir shocked rebels and observers by refusing to sign a peace deal to end the 20-month conflict. The U.S. circulated a draft resolution to council members Wednesday evening, and diplomats say they expect a vote on the issue very soon. On Monday, President Kiir refused to sign the peace deal proposed by regional leaders, saying he required more time. Mr. Kiir's decision baffled his opponent and former deputy Riek Machar, who signed it.
I couldn't find any explanation because he had it all. He had it. Probably it is us who would feel, had we been given the opportunity to directly negotiate with him, we might have got extracted from him much more concessions.
Mr. Kiir previously said he needed 15 days before he decides on signing the agreement, but some observers believe a delay will not improve the conflict, pitting Mr. Kiir's ethnic Dinka people against Machar's Nuer.
It is about the fate of this nation, and it is, of course, a grave duty to take the right decisions. But I hope the decisions are taken now and as soon as possible, since there is so little time to waste.
Earlier this week, the U.S. National Security Advisor Susan Rice criticized Mr. Kiir's government for a failure of leadership, saying it had yet again squandered the opportunity to bring peace and end a conflict. The United Nations said the war has displaced more than 2 million people, with just under half of them fleeing to neighboring countries. Well, if South Sudan's government doesn't sign the peace deal by September 1st, senior political leaders of South Sudan will face sanctions. However, if Kiir does sign the agreement, the arms embargo will not go forward. While in the Middle East, 4 people were killed in Yemen and at least 11 were injured when a car bomb exploded near the governor's office in Aden. The city recently recaptured from Houthi militants by forces allied with the returning government in exile. Meanwhile, a massive humanitarian crisis is pushing Yemen to the brink of famine, and analysts say the only winners in this war may be Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State militants. Africa 54's Clara Frank has more.
The United Nations humanitarian chief calls the scale of suffering in Yemen incomprehensible and warns that unless the fighting ends soon, there will be nothing left to fight for.
I was shocked by what I saw. The civilian population is bearing the brunt of the conflict. A shocking 4 out of 5 Yemenis require humanitarian assistance, and nearly 1.5 million people are internally displaced. More than 1,000 children have been killed.
O'Brien briefed the Security Council Wednesday on his just-completed trip to Yemen, saying he is shocked by what he saw. He said civilians are feeling the brunt of the fighting between the Saudi-led Arab coalition and Iranian-backed Houthi rebels. The director of the World Food Program, Artharian Cousin, said millions of Yemenis are at risk of going without food.
Even before this crisis began, Yemen had one of the highest malnutrition rates in the entire world. What we're seeing now is an increase in the number of severe malnutrition cases because of lack of access of our program operators to provide the support that is necessary. So what we're seeing now is we're trying to play catch-up. We're trying to play catch-up to save the lives of these children and to ensure the opportunity for them to receive the nutritious food that they require.
Women line up to receive what aid is getting through, but Cousins says all ports and roads need to open so food can be safely transported to those in desperate need of help. Back at the UN humanitarian chief says the international community must match its actions with words and take immediate steps to end the violence destroying lives in Yemen. Clara Frank, VOA News, Washington.
Well, refugees from Somalia who fled to Yemen to escape war and poverty are facing similar turmoil in their adoptive country and now want to return to their homeland. Abdulaziz Bilo has more.
This abandoned university in the port town of Mukalla has become home to thousands of Somali refugees and displaced Yemenis caught up in the conflict that has engulfed Yemen since early this year. Nurto, a mother of 7, has been living in Yemen for more than 12 years. She says she can no longer care for her children and wants to return to her native Somalia.
Since the fighting started, there's absolutely no way I could work. Everyone's on the run. Us, the Arabs, the United Nations. There was no one left to help us. We waited, hoping things will cool down, but it seems nothing changed. So we've decided to return to Somalia, whether we live or die.
Houthi rebels have been fighting the government in Yemen for nearly a year. However, Saudi Arabia and other Arab nations have launched airstrikes against the rebels, ousting them from a string of towns in southern Yemen. Mohammed Abdullahi, a Somali fisherman and a father of 6, fled with his family from the port town of Aden. He is among the thousands who were trapped in the fighting.
I was a fisherman when I was living in Aden. I earned a living for my family through fishing. But once the fighting commenced, there was absolutely no way I could continue working. Me and my family were trapped in Aden for more than 3 months.
A ship sent by Somalia's business community with the help of international aid agencies brings back more than 2,500 Somalis. They boarded the ship for a 30-hour voyage from Mukalla to the Somali town of Bosaso. Most were women, young children and the elderly. In Somalia at last, their hope is that the federal government will resettle them and guarantee their security so they can build a better life in coming years. Abdul Aziz Bilo for VOA News, Bosaso.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. Check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, an increase in new HIV infections in Uganda has health workers worried. Stay with us.
From Science and Technology, here's What's New.
What's new? An electronic jacket for motorcyclists. It's a motorcycle safety vest fitted with bright indicator lights that increase the visibility of the motorcyclist. An intention to turn is indicated as usual on the bike's indicator lights, but also on the back of the jacket. The jacket is hooked up to the bike's electronics. In bustling cities like Nairobi in Kenya, more and more people are using motorcycle taxis to get around. Joseph Kariuki has been a motorcycle taxi operator for 5 years.
Many of our people die, most deaths being caused by motor vehicles on the road.
Kenya's National Transport Authority says an average of 3,000 people are killed on Kenyan roads each year, many involving motorcycles. Charles Muchene is the CEO of the wearable tech company Chadlight.
One of the ideas that came up is to increase the visibility of an individual motorcyclist by just elevating their indication system.
For VOA's What's New, I'm Todd Grossans.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon Beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
Welcome back. Lino Mudo is off today. But in today's health, Uganda had the 3rd highest number of new HIV infections in sub-Saharan Africa last year, reversing its reputation for successfully tackling the epidemic in the 1990s. Although the percentage of people living with HIV and AIDS is still half of what it was in the 1980s, the increase in new infections is worrying to health workers. Sergio Rusblad reports from Kampala.
Billboards across Kampala warn of the dangers of unprotected sex. But the Ugandan AIDS Commission says the country has the 3rd highest number of new HIV infections in sub-Saharan Africa. Health officials say one of the reasons is that Uganda has become a victim of its own success, especially after the introduction of antiretroviral drugs.
I think what came in is complacence. People got satisfied that once you're on medication, you'll be all right. And people began saying that, HIV is like any other disease. So the fear not to, get it and vanished.
Uganda had received international praise for dropping its virus prevalence rates from 15% at its peak in 1991 to 7.3% today. But the risk remains and is growing among people like 30-year-old Joyce.
I wanted to go to school, so this guy was dating me, so I think I became so reckless with my life. I had life sex with him. I think that's where I got HIV from. That's where I remember. AIDS
activists say people are not making use of the simplest ways to protect against HIV, a condom.
We would say that about 35-40% of people who should use condom are not using them.
The Ugandan government is responding to the spike in new cases by creating an HIV/AIDS trust fund to finance a campaign against complacency.
So we believe that as a parliament, by creating this HIV and AIDS trust fund, where us Ugandans are going to contribute towards this levy, I believe it is going to help us to reach out to those people that we may not have reached out to.
Funding has been an issue in recent years, leading to a shortage in HIV testing kits and other protective devices, especially when donor money runs dry.
We have continued to depend on the donors for supply of condoms in the country. So once the supplies are short-cut, then it means that the population doesn't have the condom for protection.
Joyce, who has been living with HIV for 5 years, hopes these measures will help, but says all is not lost for those with the virus.
The best medicine for HIV is acceptance. The more you accept your status, the more you live longer.
Serginho Roosblad for VOA News, Kampala, Uganda.
Wall Street vendors in Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, are turning their cars into mobile shops to make ends meet, defying the government's ban on hawking. Africa 54's Esther Githu tells us more.
Built in the 1980s, the city of Abuja is home to some of the most expensive real estate in Africa. It replaced Lagos as the country's administrative hub in 1991. The Nigeria government came up with a plan for the city of Abuja in the 1970s to create a new central business district with prime real estate away from the chaotic busy streets of Lagos, but little consideration was given for street hawkers and small-scale vendors. But in a bid to make ends meet, some people have turned their car boots into mobile shops, defying a ban on hawking.
We prefer selling here because, let me just say, there's no source of income for paying for a shop right now. So that's why we decided to stay here and sell.
Ayub Bitrus Chagwa is the facility manager for Abuja Markets Management at the Wuse Market. He says the car boot hawkers should carry out their businesses in designated areas only.
They should find a place that is authorized by law to do their businesses, because government have provide avenue. We have plazas, we have markets which are properly managed and secure.
Emmanuel Soti is a civil servant who works close to the streets where some car boot hawkers sell their merchandise.
Most of the times, as a working class person, it might not be too easy for me to go to the market, except maybe on weekends and things like that.
With a population of over 170 million people, Nigeria's government faces a huge challenge to accommodate small-scale businesses. And until such plans are put in place, car boot hawking will likely continue for some time to come. Esther Githu, VOA News, Washington.
Well, so what else do you know about Africa? Well, today we go behind the headlines and talk about why My Africa Is, a documentary series that takes you on a journey across the continent through the eyes of an insider. To tell us more about it, I'm joined by Nozareme Garrick, the founder of My Africa Is. Nozareme, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me.
First, just share with us very briefly how this idea was born.
So the idea behind My Africa was to change the narrative that we've seen permeating about the African continent. I myself am Nigerian and moved to the U.S. and found that a lot of people that I met when I moved here had no idea about the African continent, had a lot of preconceived notions that were absolutely false, and a story that's been told since the 60s.
Yes.
And we felt it was time to update that story, especially through video form, so the individuals could not only hear about it, but actually see it.
Now, there's one story that you've featured, and we have a video of that. And tell us why you thought this is one story that is important for the rest of the world to see. This is from Lagos, actually, on recycling.
Yes, so the story I believe you're speaking about is Bilikis Adebi Abiola's story about Recyclers. And the Recyclers is an initiative that she took on, which was to change the way people were recycling, there wasn't really a culture of recycling in Lagos. And there's just been so much trash everywhere that people just feel they can throw, and it's raising a new consciousness about reusing and recycling waste and keeping our gutters clean, because as you know, there have been floods that have come about from clogged gutters. And the reason why we thought it was interesting and important to tell the story is because this is not a story that's singular to Nigeria. It's a story that you could see in Ghana, in Senegal, all across the African continent, where trash is not properly disposed of and recycled.
But again, here is also being told from that perspective that there are Africans and many times young people who are actually doing things to change the environment, to change their countries, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we wanted to break away from the idea that we're victims in our homes, and actually we are very innovative, we're very enterprising, and I think it was time that we started hearing some of those stories.
You did a story that trended big time. This is about a young Nigerian girl who flies. Tell us very briefly about this girl and how you got to know about her.
Well, Kimberly Anyadike is who you're talking about, and she was a 15-year-old girl that flew from Compton to the east coast of the country, and she was the youngest person to have achieved that. She was actually in the U.S., but she is of Nigerian descent, and, you know, Africans do make up part of the American narrative as well, so we wanted to include that. And everyone loved the story, and it just shows you that there's a thirst for these types of stories.
I think it's tweeted like, what, 4,000 something within no time? Hey, our kids also fly.
Absolutely.
In the United States.
Absolutely.
That is cool. What is in the pipeline?
We just came back from filming in Nairobi, Kenya last month, and so we'll be releasing that on PBS in February of 2016.
And eventually, I mean, are you going to just be telling these stories exclusively to American audiences, or is it also something you want other African audiences to share?
Historically, our stories have been told online, so we have a global audience. This will be our first foray into broadcast, American broadcast. And what we're hoping is that it will see global distribution as well, because it's not just something the Americans need to hear about, it's something the world needs to know.
Okay. How do you cover this? Do you have correspondent, or do you just travel everywhere?
I travel.
You travel everywhere.
I travel with the crew, we capture these stories,
That's a good job, really impressive. So you're going to feature my show one time and just tell people what we do here?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
It's just as important.
It is important. Very important. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Noza Remy, and I wish you well in all your endeavors.
Thank you.
Well, Noza Remy, Garrick is the founder of My Africa Is, a documentary series that takes you on a journey across the continent through the eyes of an insider. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. Beyonce makes history again. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Burundi, President Pierre Nkurunziza is sworn in for a third term despite a controversial election, weeks of protest, and a failed coup. In Egypt, dozens of people were wounded when a car bomb exploded near a security building in a Cairo suburb. In the Central African Republic, UN officials received new allegations that peacekeepers in the CAR raped 3 young women. Finally, in Kenya, annual Camel Derby is the latest attempt to revitalize the country's tourism industry, which was devastated by Islamist attacks and a 25% drop in visitors. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Esther Gido-Yuat. Here's what's trending. Beyonce Knowles will grace the cover of Vogue magazine's famed September issue. The global star appears in an embellished Marc Jacobs dress and coat with shoulder-length hair, as photographed by the famed Mario Testino. A video posted on Vogue.com titled Beyonce Moving, Morphing, Leading, Flaunting shows a behind-the-scenes look at the photoshoot. Beyonce is the first black musician and just the third black woman ever featured on the cover of Vogue's annual mega issue. The issue will hit the newsstands August 25th. Next up, things are getting even shadier between Rihanna and NBA player Matt Barnes. The singer put Barnes on blast for all of her 24 Instagram million followers to see her after the athlete said some things that she didn't agree with. Dating rumors between the two sparked a while ago after the Memphis Grizzlies player made it clear that he was interested in the Barbados beauty. He made her his woman crush Wednesday on Instagram a few months ago and would flirt with her over Twitter. Rihanna posted a screenshot of Barnes that included a caption full of brutal hashtags. Oops. And finally, exercising in the backseat, running a business or relaxing, everything is possible in the custom-made luxury vehicles produced by the California-based Becker Automotive Design. The vehicles look like regular sport utility vehicles on the outside, but they're more like private jets on the inside with floor-to-ceiling leather interiors, built-in media systems, and even the option of reclining massage chairs. There's a 6-month waiting list for the vehicles. Prices range from $160,000 to close to $500,000 for vehicles that are fully armored. And that's what's trending today. Vincent?
Yeah, I want that car, please. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. From all of us here in Washington, have a good night.
Vous et nous, c'est votre émission.
Une émission qui parle de vous, mais aussi de nous.
Un nouveau regard sur l'Afrique et les États-Unis.
Tout ce qui nous passionne et donc nous rapproche.
Racontez-nous vos histoires.
Et nous vous raconterons les nôtres.
Vies africaines.
Vie américaine.
Vous et nous, c'est ce que nous avons en commun.
Et aussi ce que nous apprenons les uns des autres. La vie.
Vous et nous.
Vous et nous.
Ensemble.
Real talk, real issues, the real Africa. It's time to get the scoop. Monday through Friday on VOA. Find your time zone and get the scoop.